This is Christian Book Blurb, brought to you by author and songwriter Matt McChlery. Get a behind-the-scenes glimpse into the lives of some of your favourite Christian authors, hear about their books and faith. Also, why not check out my website, mattmcclery.com. Hello and welcome to this special New Year's edition of Christian Book Blurb. This is the podcast where I chat with Christian authors about their faith, their lives, and of course, their books. It is the start of 2023, so a very happy new year to you all. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for continuing the journey with Christian Book Blurb. I don't think you're going to be disappointed by the author I'm speaking to today. I thought New Year's episode, the best thing to do is let's start the new year off with a really positive message, something that will put the beat back in our step and help us face this year with positivity and faith. So it gives me great pleasure to welcome on the show today, all the way from America, Zach Windahl. Hi, Zach.
Hey, thank you so much for having me on here. This is awesome. And Happy New Year, everybody. Come on.
I loved reading your book. It's called See the Good. See the Good by Zach Windahl. And I found it really easy to read. It was very encouraging and uplifting. But before I steal your thunder, can you tell us a little bit about your book, See the Good?
Thank you. I mean, that's so kind. My goodness, that's exactly the response that I pray that everybody has reading it. So See the Good is really all about learning how to shift your perspective in life. I think so often in our culture and in the church, it can be so easy to focus on all the bad that's going on around us and to be pretty pessimistic of where we're headed. But I think that as believers, we should be focusing on where God is moving and all that he's doing in the world, because there's a ton of that as well. And so that's really my heart behind this book and the hope that I have behind people reading it.
That's really good. And as I say, I really enjoyed reading it myself. So that's kind of your aim with the book. But what kind of started you on the journey of writing the book? What gave you the initial idea, and then that kind of, oh yeah, this might grow into something called a book? Or where did this message come from?
Absolutely. I think it began really at an early age for me. When I was 4 years old, my mom was diagnosed with stage 4 ovarian cancer, was sent home with a 5% chance to live. And then she was healed from that. And then she had a tumor around her sciatic nerve and was healed from that. And then she had colon cancer with 3/4 of her colon removed and was healed from that. And then when I was 15, she had breast cancer with a double mastectomy and was healed from that. So literally from like 4 to 15, my entire life was based around my mom being in and out of the hospital and never knowing if she was going to make it. And she always ingrained this into my brain. She always said, Zach, you know what? It could be so much worse. I could not be here today. So you need to treat every day like the gift that it is and try to see God amongst everything. And so during my most developmental years of my life, that was how I began to view everything in life. And I really feel like a lot of people that I know and a lot of people I'm surrounded by didn't have that privilege to be raised that way. And so I feel like it's my life message kind of to help people shift their perspective a little bit and to really see where God is moving instead of just focusing on all the bad that's going on around them.
And I don't know what it's like in America, but I know that here in the UK, where I'm based, especially since COVID and the lockdowns, that's kind of profoundly shifted the mood. It's kind of changed perspectives and outlooks. And I think these days we're dealing a lot more with sort of the negativity that can overwhelm us, the kind of, well, what's the point of it all kind of mentality that we can so easily slip into. Is that a similar thing in America?
Yeah, I don't know if it's too in extreme, but I would definitely say that's the case where I'm at, and it just seems like it's just such a topic of conversation amongst everybody, and it's like, man, what if we saw the good instead, and how would that change just the way that we live our lives? Maybe it would bring some more joy and happiness into our days instead of just focusing on being dragged down by the toughness of it.
I see. Bob Goff. Bob Goff. I love Bob
Yeah.
Goff's books. I see that he wrote the foreword of your book. I'll just read
Yes.
a little something, a little extract from that, because I think it really sums up the book really quite
Yeah.
nicely. He says, instead of telling people what they want, we need to tell them who they are. And we'll become in our lives whoever the people we love the most say we are. And I really think that your book speaks to that and starts to tell people who they are in Christ, who God sees them as. But let's chat about your relationship with Bob at the moment. How did
Yeah.
you meet him?
Oh my goodness, Bob is the best guy ever. He's a coach and a mentor of mine. I think it's really important to find someone in life that's kind of ahead of you and at a place where you want to be one day. And for me, Bob's that guy. So I try to spend as much time around him, listening, learning, honoring, and really allowing him to speak into my life. And I feel so blessed by it. It began by I brought my entire my team out to spend a few days with him out at his place in San Diego, outside of San Diego, called the Oaks, and we spent a few days with him and just built a relationship from there. And I try to go out to his area maybe every quarter just to be around him, and I talk to him maybe once a month or so just to learn from him and stay up to date on where we're at and try to grow as much as possible.
For me, he seems to have a lot of wisdom to give, a lot of
Yeah,
insight. And
100%.
is he as wacky as he comes across?
He will do anything at any time, and it's pretty incredible. He's also very calculated and probably the most wise, smartest person that I've ever met. So but yeah, he's an adventurer at heart, and he's always looking to have fun.
I love that. So in the book, one of the things you talk about is the importance of rest. Is
Yes.
this a big area minefield? Is this something that you have to deal with personally a lot?
Yes. So I like to say that I'm a recovering workaholic. So rest is a new thing for me. My work ethic throughout my 20s was very unhealthy. So I would work 12 to 16 hours, 7 days a week. I didn't take a day off for like 6 years because I was just surrounded by that hustle culture and thought that if I wanted to make something of my life, then I had to be this machine and outwork everybody around me. But then I got married, and that lifestyle was not sustainable if I wanted a healthy marriage. So praise God for my wife and the impact that she's had on my work rest relationship as well. And as I began to rest and I stopped striving after things myself, God actually began to open even bigger doors than I could ever attribute them to myself. And so it's been a journey, and I'm learning how to get better at it. But I have seen the fruit of rest so much just over the last few years that it's like, man, I want that to be the soundtrack to the rest of my life.
What came first? That sort of personal revelation of need for rest, or John Mark Comer's book, The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry?
Totally. I mean, that played a huge part in it for sure. I think I remember reading that book with my wife right when I think it came out right before we got married. And yeah, just like learning from him and learning from some other incredible scholars on the importance of Sabbath and rest is like, yeah, I think everybody should read that book. I'm a big fan.
Yeah, I agree. It's impacted me quite a lot as well. It's a
Yeah.
great book. Um, I love how in the book you focus on Jesus using meals
Yeah.
for evangelism. I think that's really interesting. Um, because aren't they everyday social interactions? We've all got to eat, right?
Yeah.
So, and it's a place where we can share life together. I mean, of course, if it's sort of a fast food, sort of as you're driving along or whatever, well, don't do that.
Yeah.
You'll get in
Right,
trouble.
right.
But you know what I mean? It's an opportunity where we can sit, we can slow down, we can share life together, we can share Jesus with others, what he's doing in our lives. Tell us more about this idea.
Yeah. I worked in hospitality for over a decade, and food has always just been really important for me in my life. And not just because of like the food aspect, like you were saying, but because of the social aspect. I love food experiences with people. And as I was studying the gospel, something that really stood out to me was that the way that Jesus came and lived his life and taught people was often around a table. It was often over a meal with others. And whether they believed what he was preaching or not, that's where they came together. And it was through that shared interaction that bonded them and allowed the other people to be more open to what he had to say. And I think it's the same with us. We don't need to get meals with people and find a way just to preach the gospel to them. But no, we can just like enjoy our time together and allow them to ask questions and have it be a cool thing that we do with people. And I think it's a way that we can evangelize to others that isn't often used. But I think it would really change a lot of people's relationship with believers.
The book, obviously, I mean, called See the Good, and there's this huge big smiley face, like an emoji smiley face on the cover. It focuses a lot on positivity, on being positive, on being happy. But I guess a book like this can become a bit dangerous in a way, where it's putting a lot of emphasis on being happy, on being positive. But what about the times in life where people might find it difficult to be positive, or they're going through something really tough or challenging? Should they pretend that everything is fine and put on that sort of emoji smiley face and sort of just try and ignore or push down those negative feelings? What advice can you give on that, and how does the book deal with that?
Yeah. So I talk about something in the book called negativity bias, and it's where we're actually implanted in our DNA to focus on the negative. So if 10 things happen throughout the day, 9 of them are amazing, but there's one bad, for some reason, we always focus on that one negative one. And I think it goes back to our ancestors just always having to be on edge, because if you hear a rustle in the bushes, you don't know if it's a lion or you don't know if it's a rabbit. But you're always just having to be afraid of what's next. And as society has evolved and our culture has grown over over hundreds of years, things are different now. But it's still super ingrained into us. And I think it's totally normal to not be positive all the time. But I do believe that if you focus on the good gets bigger in your life. And as you build that as a habit of seeing the good, it will become much more natural to us. So like start one day at a time. Like it's not going to be a complete shift. And like I'm not happy and ecstatic and positive all the time or every day, but it's something that you grow in. And I think if we grow a little bit every single day, it's going to compound and impact our life in a much more joyful way.
So it's not a case of ignoring the bad or the difficult stuff and the trials, but actually, even in the midst of suffering, in the midst of trial, still trying to focus on the good that's there rather than the negative.
100%. Push your way through the bad, and I believe that on the other side of all of it, there is a lot of joy there.
Great. Let's chat very quickly about your writing process. How does it work for you? I've spoken to loads of different authors, and everyone seems to do it slightly differently. Some do it very differently. But how do you write a book? How does it come together? Lots of post-it notes on a chart somewhere, or do you just sit down and then just sort of go crazy on the keyboard for an hour? How does it work?
Right. You can tell me if this is unconventional, but I feel like it is pretty unconventional. I never grew up wanting to write a book. It just wasn't something that was like a huge passion of mine until later in my life. And so the way that it works for me is I basically take a bunch of note cards and I'll write on them topics or stories or facts or ideas. And maybe I'll have 200 note cards and I'll lay them out on this big coffee table for a week, and I will just spend time staring at them and zoning out and rearranging them every once in a while and seeing a pattern throughout. And once I develop a pattern that I'm happy with, then I turn it into an outline. And I build out the outline. I could have a 200-page outline. And then from there, I smooth it out by adding in transitions and new parts of the story and just grow from there. So that's what works for me. I'm very like analytical and I just see things in like systems. And so that's kind of how I do it.
Yeah, interesting. Oh, really good. Thank you for sharing that with us.
Yeah.
We'll be back in just a moment after this short break, and we'll be chatting some more with Zach Windahl about his faith and his life. Join us on the other side. Hi, I'm author Matt McChlery. My new book, The Prison Letters, a 40-day devotional for Lent, will take you on a thematic journey through the books of Ephesians, Philippians, Colossians, and Philemon. Packed full of personal anecdotes and wisdom, the message Paul conveyed to his readers during his imprisonment is brought to life. The Prison Letters devotional is available now from my website, mattmcclery.com, and wherever good books are sold. Get your copy today. If you enjoy listening to this podcast, you can help keep it on the web. All you've got to do is buy me a coffee. Head over to buymeacoffee.com/MattMcChlery to make a donation. There is a link in this episode's show notes. So go on, buy me a coffee today and help this podcast to keep supporting Christian books and authors. And welcome back to the Christian Book Blurb podcast. I am chatting with author Zach Windahl about his book, See the Good. In this half of the episode, we're going to chat to Zach a little bit about his life and his faith. So, Zach, one of the things we like to do is sort of peel back the cover of the author and just kind of find out a little bit about who you are as a person. Yeah. You know, what makes you happy in this instance. Yeah. What gets you out of bed in the morning? You know, have you got any favorite things you like doing, any hobbies, that sort of thing?
You know, as we talked about food is actually huge for me. So I love trying new restaurants with friends. I love like food experiences, and more so for getting other people to experience new things, just because I love to see like their reaction and what they think about it. I also love games, being active. I spend a ton of time just with my family. So my wife and I moved back to Minneapolis just last year after spending a couple years down in Miami, and she's from there. So I brought her up to the cold in Minneapolis, and my family's here. And we have a lot of really close friends here. So we're just a tight-knit group of people that love spending time together. And we don't have any kids, but we have a mini Bernedoodle. So it's a Bernese Mountain Dog mixed with a poodle, and it's a little teddy bear. So we have so much fun with her. And I think the biggest thing is food, friends, family, that whole deal. So
you mentioned games. Are those board games? Or are they
board
like
games,
games
some video games. My wife is much better at video games than I am, but I always have fun with Mario Kart and things like that. But board games, love board games.
What would be your favorite board game at the moment?
Oh man, I would say that's a great question. I love Scattergories. I think that's a very cool game. Yeah. There's this new one, but I can't even think of the name of it right now that we just got that is a blast. It'll come to me.
You're talking about food. What about hobbies? Do you have any sort of do you have spare time first of all?
Yeah. So I now have spare time leading into 2023. This year is going to be much different for me from years in the past. I've ran my own business for the last 4 or 5 years, and so that was a lot of that took over a lot of my time. But we actually sold the business just a couple months ago, and so now I'm focusing a lot of my time on writing. Hobbies are I'm very structured with my day, so it's like, okay, I'm going to work out, I'm going to work, I'm going to have meals with friends, and I feel like that's what most of my time consists of, is like meals and reading. I love reading. So but nothing crazy. No, I feel like my life's a little boring right now in that sense. No,
it's good.
No extreme hobbies.
Yeah. Earlier on in the episode, you're talking about your sort of family background and growing up. How did you become a Christian? How did you come to faith?
I grew up in the church. I grew up. I was baptized at an early age, but then when I hit college, I fell away from my faith pretty drastically, and then also a few years following it. And in 2014, I hit a low spot where I was like, man, I don't even know if I want to consider myself a Christian anymore. Like, I need to go all in and figure out if this is actually for me. I wanted to study the Bible, really, because even though I knew the right Christian answers and I had good morals, I just didn't have a relationship with the Bible at all. And so I ended up moving out to Australia for almost a year just to study as in-depth as I could. So we would study 12 hours a day, 6 days a week. Like if it was Genesis week, we would literally read Genesis 5 times through during that week and like build our own commentaries, sort of. And so during that time, my faith really grew, and that's when I was like, okay, I'm all in. I'm sold out to this. Now let's figure out a way to help other people that were in my same shoes, help them develop a better relationship with God and be less overwhelmed by the Bible, and make it more real and actionable every day in small ways, not in some like drastic ways, but like how can I love my neighbors and love God today in the spot that I'm at, and help others do the same.
Yeah, you've mentioned that your life is changing after selling the business, and you got a bit more time to devote to writing as well. So I'm going to be a bit cheeky here. Can we have a sneaky peek into something you're working on at the moment?
So I always have my hands in quite a few different things, and who knows if they'll actually come into fruition. But right now, dabbling around with a devotional. I'm pretty active on TikTok, and I do these devotionals every single day where I just read a devotional, and people seem to love it. So I'm thinking about doing a devotional in 2023, and then also a book on like wholeness and holiness. So like looking at mental, physical, and spiritual health. So that's what has been on the top of my mind lately, and we'll see what it turns into. It could absolutely change in 2 months, but I'm always trying to thinking about what's next for me.
No, that's really good. Thank you for sharing that with us. So you've got this book out, See the Good. Have you got any other books that you've written?
Yeah, I wrote one called The Bible Study, which has helped over 400,000 people grow closer to God through studying the Bible. It basically holds your hand as you read the Bible over the course of a year. I wrote a book called Launch with God, which talks all about starting a business and kind of co-laboring with God to impact the world in a positive way. And then I have some little like planners and things like that, all under this brand called The Brand Sunday. Yeah.
Okay, great. Where can people find these books? Have you got a website, social media, any of that? Can you point us in the right direction?
ZachWindahl.com, social media, Instagram and TikTok, just under Zach Windahl. A lot of our books are at thebrandsunday.com, and then available most places that books are sold. So Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Target, all things like that.
Thank you so much for joining us on
Thank you.
Christian Book Blurb podcast. It's been excellent talking to you. And if you're listening and you fancy starting off this new year with a really positive step, this book will be sure to put a smile on your face as you learn to see the good in all of life. So thank you, Zach, for joining us. That was excellent. And thank you so much to you, the listener, for joining us for this episode. Don't forget, we have an episode that comes out twice a month. So in a couple of weeks, another episode will be coming your way with yet another awesome Christian author, where we're going to talk about their books, their faith, and their life. Don't forget, you can also sign up over on my website to my monthly email newsletter, and you'll find a book giveaway in there that happens exclusively to subscribers once a month. So if you fancy getting your hands on a free book, do go and check that out. Well, thank you so much for joining us, and a happy new year to you, and I pray that this 2023 will be a blessed year for you. Thank you and goodbye.
Thanks for listening to Christian Book Blurb with your host, Matt McChlery. Do give it a like, give it a share, and let your friends know all about it. We do hope to see you again soon on another Christian Book Blurb.